be extremely slow, so we'll need to adjust for that. Over to Draw.io, we want to search for a server as it is free to use, is to help understand how data might flow up in the cloud using a cloud provider such as Vultr or Azure, for example, since virtualization doesn't play nice. If you have a Windows machine, you can use VirtualBox to set up everything. That is what I'll use. The main reason why we want to build out our diagram is to help understand how data might flow and how the pieces are strung up together. During interviews, some would actually provide you with a whiteboard and ask you to create a diagram of a basic lab, and hopefully by participating in this project, you will have more confidence in doing so. To create our diagram, I'll be using a site called Draw.io as it is free to use and quick to access. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that these diagrams do not need to be pretty. You just need to do it and build it out. Later down the road, you can make it look pretty, especially if you're presenting this to a client. But if it is just a lab environment, I'd rather you focus on actually doing it versus spending hours on making it look visually appealing. As for the hardware requirements, ideally, if you have a computer with at least 16 gigs of RAM and 250 gigs of disk space, you should be fine. Anything under, you might experience some random issues and your machines might be extremely slow, so we'll need to adjust for that. Over to Draw.io, we want to search for a server icon by clicking on the search shapes, which we can find right here on the top left corner. What we can do is type in server and hit enter, and then you can choose whichever icon you want. I will select the traditional server over here and drag it, and I'll be using two servers. So one is going to be for our Splunk and another is for our Active Directory. So I'll just go ahead and right click and hit duplicate. And now we got two servers. Now let's search for computer. I'll go ahead and replace server with computer and hit enter. And I think this one looks to be okay. So I'll grab that and drag it over. And I'll right click and duplicate again. Now we have two computers. One is going to be our target machine, which is a Windows 10 machine. And then the other is going to be our attacker machine. And I'll color the attacker machine as red, and we can do that on the top right corner by selecting the red color. So I'll go ahead and do that. And now our attacker machine is red. This way we know exactly what we're looking at, as now we can actually differentiate between the target machine and the attacker machine. The last couple icons that I want to use is going to be a switch and a router, as well as a cloud to indicate for the internet. So let's go ahead and search for switch. I'll click on more results to see what other icons exist. And I do see this one here, L2 switch. This one looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and click on that and we'll search for router. And this one looks to be pretty clean. The last couple icons that I want to use is going to be a switch and a router, as well as a cloud to indicate for the internet. So let's go ahead and search for switch. I'll click on more results to see what other icons exist. And I do see this one here, L2 switch. This one looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and click on that and we'll search for router. And this one looks to be pretty good. Drag this one up. And the last one is going to be a cloud. So I'll just type in cloud and we can just select the first one. Perfect. Now that we have our icons, we want to start connecting them together. And to do that, we can highlight over them and then you will see an arrow up, left, down, right. What we can do is click on the arrow and then we can just drag it onto another icon. In this case, I'm connecting it to the switch. I'll move the computer just a bit. That way we have a little bit more space. And I don't like the connection here. So instead, I'm going to connect it like that. Let's do the same for the attacking machine. Connect it over to the switch. And you might notice that some of the lines are not straight. See that there's a little curve there. What we can do is just drag it up until it's straight. Just like that. I'll go ahead and move the servers over. Let's put them on top of each other. And then I'll drag it and connect it to the switch. Now we do the router, switch to router, and then router to the internet. Beautiful. Now there are some couple options that you can do located over on the right hand side. Now if you take a look at our connectors, for example, this one right here, you might notice that there's a little curve. And if you don't like that, we can actually change the way it looks by clicking on this drop down icon. So once I click on it, there's an option for a straight line. I'll go ahead and select that. And now you might notice that the line is now straight. And then we can just move it like this. And it doesn't have any of that curving action as we see on the servers. In my opinion, I like it like this. It looks a lot more cleaner. So I'll leave it as straight. Now that we have everything connected, I am just going to format it just a little bit. That way it looks a little bit nicer. And I am going to add in our network information. So we can just double click anywhere on the screen and select text. And I'll type in the domain. So the domain that we're going to create, I'm going to call it as my DFIR. As for the network, I'll be using a 192.168.10.0/24. And our Splunk server is going to have an IP of 192.168.10.10. And our Active Directory server is going to have an IP of 192.168.10.7. And lastly, our attacker machine is going to have an IP of 192.168.10.250. And just like that, we have all of our networking. For the network, I'll be using a 192.168.10.0/24. And our Splunk server is going to have an IP of 192.168.10.10. And our Active Directory server is going to have an IP of 192.168.10.7. And lastly, our attacker machine is going to have an IP of 192.168.10.250. And just like that, we have all of our networking information. Right here. Next, let's add some data onto our icons. So I'll just go ahead and double click an icon, and then this server will be our Splunk server. So I'll type in Splunk server with the IP of 192.168.10.10. The second server, I will say Active Directory. It will have an IP of 192. .168.10.7. It will also have a a Splunk universal forwarder, as this will allow us to send data over to our Splunk server. We will also have sysmon installed. That way it can collect telemetry on the server and again, send it over to Splunk. The next is our target machine. This is going to be a Windows 10 machine, and the IP, this is just going to be a DHCP assigned IP. It will have a Splunk universal forwarder as well, and sysmon. As for our attacker machine, this is going to be Kali Linux with an IP of 192.168.10.250. And I think that's pretty good. So this is actually kind of bugging me, so I'm just gonna straighten this out. There you go, perfect. I am going to draw another line over to our Splunk server to indicate that it is forwarding data over to our Splunk server. I am going to change this line to a dotted line by clicking on this drop down right here. Once we click on the drop down, we'll see a dotted line at the very bottom. That's the one I'm going to be using. And I will also remove the arrow as well.
Vault open.
So I'll select none, and I will select Straighten this out. There you go. Perfect. I am going to draw another line over to our Splunk server to indicate that it is forwarding data over to our Splunk server. I am going to change this line to a dotted line by clicking on this drop down right here. Once we click on the drop down, we'll see a dotted line at the very bottom. That's the one I'm going to be using. And I will also remove the arrow as well. So I'll select none and I will select straight. Perfect. And might as well color it in green. Let's do the same for our Active Directory server since we are sending data over to Splunk. So I'll go ahead and connect our line there, change it to a dotted line, change this to straight, even though it's already straight, and remove the arrow and color it green. So this dotted line will indicate our forwarding of logs over to Splunk. We aren't going to forward anything from Kali over to Splunk. Move the arrow and color it and change this to straight Splunk. So I'll go ahead and connect our line there, change it to a dotted line, change this to straight, even though it's already straight, and remove the arrow and color it green. So this dotted line will indicate our forwarding of logs over to Splunk. We aren't going to forward anything from Kali over to Splunk, so we don't need to connect anything from there. If we did have a firewall, we could be sending data over to Splunk via syslog on port 514, but we don't have a firewall, so we'll just leave it as that. One last thing I forgot about was the perfect, and might as well color it in green. Let's do the same data over.
Every time I hit a bottleneck, I build a new AI employee to crush it. I used to say that I had one AI employee working for me 24/7.
To our Splunk server. I am going to change this line to a dotted line by clicking on this drop down right here. Once we click on the drop down, we'll see a dotted line at the very bottom. That's the one I'm going to be using. And I will also remove the arrow as well. So I'll select none and I will select straight. Right here. Once we click on the drop down, we'll see a dotted line at the very bottom. That's the one I'm going to be using. And I will also remove the arrow as well. So I'll select none. And I will select straight. Perfect. And might as well color it in green. Connect anything from there. If we did have a firewall, we could be sending data over to Splunk via syslog on port 514, but we don't have a firewall, so we'll just leave it as that. One last thing I forgot about was the target machine. I am also going to be installing Atomic Red Team as well. Just a nice little recap here. We will be using Sysmon to help with telemetry, and this will be installed on both Active Directory and our target machine. These will also have Splunk Universal Forwarder installed to send data back to Splunk. Lastly, our target machine will have Atomic Red Team just in case we want to generate some interesting data down the road. Now, all of the setup and installation of these tools will be in part 3 of the series. With our diagram, we should now have a better understanding of how our lab is connected. Now, of course, you can take it to the next level and add on a IDS, so an intrusion detection system, an EDR, endpoint detection and response, or a firewall to make your lab a little bit more advanced. And in fact, this is one of the things that we do in my course, which should be released within a couple months. And if you are interested, I'll leave a link down below. Hopefully, by following along, you now understand that creating a diagram is actually quite fun and pretty easy to do. Remember, it doesn't need to be pretty, but we just need to do it. And of course, have it documented somewhere. Now that we have our diagram ready to go, we will be referencing this going forward. And in this project series, I will be using a total of 2 servers, one for Splunk and one for Active Directory. 2 computers, one target machine, and one attacker machine. This will all be installed using VirtualBox. In part 2, we will be going over how to install all of our components so we can get ready for the exciting stuff later on. That is it for the video, and I hope you are as excited as I am to work together on another project. Remember to stay curious and do things differently. Welcome to part 2 of 5 for the series on the Active Directory project. If you haven't seen part 1, where we go over on how to build out a diagram for this lab, I highly recommend that you go and watch that, as I will be referencing that diagram throughout this 5-part series. Today, our objective is to install our virtual machines on VirtualBox. By the end of the video, you should have one Windows 10 machine, one Kali Linux, one Ubuntu server, and one Windows Server 2022. As a quick side note, if you are running M1, M2, or M3 Mac, you will have to create these in the cloud, and previously we used DigitalOcean. However, it did cause some issues when trying to connect or spin up Windows. So instead, I would highly recommend you use either Vultr or Microsoft Azure. I'll leave a link down below for those who want to sign up with Vultr, and you'll get a free $100 credit if you use that link. For those that don't know what Active Directory is, here is a quick high-level overview. Active Directory is simply a database that contains users, computers, groups, and many more. In order to use Active Directory, a server must install a service called Active Directory Domain Services, or ADDS, and the server must then be promoted to a domain controller, aka DC. By promoting our server to a DC, it will grant us the capability to perform authentication using a protocol called or AD install a service called Active Directory Domain Services, or ADDS, and the server must then be promoted to a domain controller, aka DC. By promoting our server to a DC, it will grant us the capability to perform authentication using a protocol called Kerberos and authorization for our domain. With ADDS, we will have a database that will contain objects such as users. Active Directory is. Here is a quick high-level overview. Active Directory is simply a database that contains users, computers, groups, and many more. In order to use Active Directory, a server must install a service called Active Directory Domain Services, or ADDS, and the server must then be promoted to a domain controller, aka DC. By promoting our server to a DC, it will grant us the capability to perform authentication using a protocol called Kerberos and authorization for our domain. With ADDS, we will have a database that will contain objects such as users, computers, groups, and many more, as previously mentioned, and these objects will contain attributes, which is information about the object. For example, an object user of Bob may contain the attribute of Bob's first and last name. That is a high-level overview. For our virtual machine, we will be using Windows 10 as our target machine, Kali Linux for the attacker machine, Windows Server 2022 for Active Directory, and Ubuntu Server 22.04 for Splunk. Now, I will be hosting all of these virtual machines on VirtualBox, but you can always use the cloud. If you aren't sure how to install VirtualBox with both Windows 10 and Kali, I'll replay a previous video that I've done to show you. Otherwise, feel free to skip ahead.
Imagine being able to build anything, for any reason, in any style.
Alright, so first we'll begin with installing VirtualBox by heading over to their site, virtualbox.org. Now, depending on the operating system you have, that is the one that we're going to be downloading. So we can go ahead and click Download VirtualBox 7.0. From here, we know that this machine that I'm using is a Windows host machine. So I'll go ahead and click download on that. While that's downloading, we can actually go ahead and check out the SHA-256 checksums as well. When you go into the checksums, it will provide you with a list of SHA-256 hashes, and then this way, we can verify the downloaded file to determine whether or not it has been altered. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll head over to the downloads directory in which our file lives in. We'll open PowerShell, and then I'll do a get file hash, VirtualBox, hit tab, click on enter, and by default, SHA-256 is generated. What we can do is double click that, and then we can paste it in and see if it matches up. So we know for a fact that the file in transit was not changed whatsoever. Now we can go ahead and double click VirtualBox to start installing it. Now we might get hit with a compatibility issue or missing some software dependencies, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. Click on yes. And from here, we notice that there is a Microsoft Visual C++ 2019 package dependency. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and install this dependency, and I'll put the link down in the description below just in case that you get hit with this dependency as well. I went and downloaded the dependency and installed it. So now we can go ahead and double click the VirtualBox installer again, hit yes. And now it doesn't give me that dependency error anymore. We are presented with some of the features which we can install, and they are all set to be installed by default, but you do have that option to customize it, which is quite nice. Here you can change where you want VirtualBox to be installed in. For example, if you don't have enough space in the C drive, you can always install it in a different drive if you like. But in this case, we'll go with the default and hit next. This will provide you with a warning that it will reset your network connection and temporarily disconnect you. Hit yes and install the needed dependencies. Once it's done installing, you should see this sign. All you got to do is click on finish, and then VirtualBox should automatically pop up. And just like that, we'll navigate to the link which I'll list down in the description for you. And once we're on this page, we can go ahead and scroll down and click on Download Tool Now. This will download what is called a media creation tool, which will help you generate a Windows just like that. We'll navigate to the link which I'll list down in the description for you. And once we're on this page, we can go ahead and scroll down and click on Download Tool Now. This will download what is called a media creation tool, which will help you generate a Windows ISO image file. So we can go ahead and double click that to open the file, click on yes. And now it will get a few things ready. You'll eventually be presented with this license agreements page, and we can go ahead and hit accept. It will say getting a few things ready again. Once it is done checking things, you should be presented with this screen now displaying two options. One, to upgrade your PC, or two, create an installation media. What we want to select is create the installation media and hit next. You have the option to customize your settings such as language, edition, and architecture, but I'll leave mine checked to use the recommended option for this PC and hit next. Now we are presented with two media choices to use, a USB flash drive or an ISO file. We'll select the ISO file and hit next and save the ISO file anywhere you like, and it will start downloading. So now that my Windows ISO image has been successfully downloaded, we can now jump over to our VirtualBox and start creating a virtual machine. We'll open up the window for VirtualBox and click on New. Here we can enter a name for our virtual machine and select the directory where we want
You ready?
New The Brow Glue Crazy Lift. Up to 24-hour lamination gel. Crazy lift, crazy hold. For lifted
August 18th, 2024, 8 p.m.
Want to store our files. So I will go ahead and name our virtual machine demo. I'll leave the folder as is. As for the ISO image, I will click on this and select the drop down, click on other, and now I'll find the ISO image that I just downloaded. It was listed under documents and double click the Windows ISO. At the bottom, there's an option where you can check skip unintended installation, which I will do actually. That way I can install the operating system manually. Now you can uncheck this or check this, it's up to you. I'll click on next. Here we have the options to configure our virtual machine specifications. However, do be aware that this will be relying on your computer's specifications. For this demo, I'll set my base memory for this virtual machine as 4 gigs. And we'll have it as 1 CPU. I'll click on next. For the virtual hard disk, I'll have it as 1 CPU. I'll click on next. For the virtual hard disk, I'll leave it as 50 gigs and hit next. Now this will give you a nice summary as to what your settings are for this virtual machine. If you're good to go, click on finish. And now we can go ahead and start powering it on. To power it on, you just hit this arrow that says start. Now, once it's running, we should be able to start seeing this Windows 10 setup. So we'll go ahead and select next and hit install now. Once you're presented with this activate Windows screen, go ahead and select I don't have a product key. And as for the option, select Windows 10. Now, once it's running, we should be able to start seeing this Windows 10 setup. So we'll go ahead and select next and hit install now. Once you're presented with this activate Windows screen, go ahead and select I don't have a product key. And as for the option, select Windows 10 Pro. Hit next, accept the license terms, and here you have the option to upgrade or custom install Windows only. I'm going to select custom install Windows only, hit next, and then now Windows 10 should be installing in the background. To install Kali, we want to head over to their site, kali.org. Once we're on their site, we want to click on download, and we'll be presented with a bunch of different options. The nice thing about Kali is that they have a pre-built virtual machine, which we can download and import into our own virtual box, which is what we'll do. Now you do have the option to go ahead and manually download Kali Linux via an ISO file, similar to how we did it with Windows 10. Let's go and download the pre-built virtual machine. I'll be downloading the 64-bit version of Kali, but if you have a 32-bit machine, you'll have to select the 32-bit. And to do that, you click on this 32-bit option here. But I'll be going to the 64-bit and downloading the VirtualBox 64. To check whether or not you have a 32 or 64-bit machine, you can click on the Windows key and type in System. Click on the System Information, and from here, you can take a look at your system type. In my case, it's an x64, meaning it's a 64-bit. Another way to look at it is if you click on the File Explorer, so open up your directories, click on the C drive. If you happen to notice two individual directories, so your program files and a program's files x86, that's another telltale sign that your computer is a 64-bit computer. Now, if you only have one of these directories, it is likely your computer is a 32-bit machine. Looking at the download for Kali Linux, I noticed that it is a 7-zip file extension, meaning that if you don't have 7-zip installed on your machine yet, I would highly recommend it. To install 7-zip, we'll go ahead and navigate to their website, 7-zip.org. Take a look at your architecture. If it's a Windows 64-bit machine or a 32-bit machine, download the appropriate one for you. In my case, it's a 64-bit machine, so I'll go ahead and download that. Once that is downloaded, I'll go ahead and install it. And it's installed. Perfect. Kali has finished downloading, and there is one thing I forgot to mention, and that is the default credentials to log into Kali Linux. The default credentials is the username Kali and the password Kali as well. Let's head over to our downloads folder, and now since we have 7-zip installed, we can go ahead and right-click the Kali Linux archive, go to 7-zip, and click on Extract to Directory. Now that it is done extracting, let's head into that folder, and all you need to do is double-click on the .vbox file. If you don't see the file extension, you can simply click on View and check File Name Extension. Once we do that, we can now see the .vbox file extension, and once we double-click that, it should automatically be imported into our VirtualBox. So we can go ahead and start Kali, and when you're on the logon screen, just remember to log in with Kali and Kali as the password. Once you have VirtualBox installed along with Windows 10 and Kali Linux, we can now begin installing our Windows Server. Over to Google, we want to search up Windows Server 2022 ISO, and we want
You're in a Discord call with two of your friends, trying to scam your way into the crypto wallet of a creditor based in Washington. This specific creditor lends out Bitcoin, and is one of the top creditors at Genesis Global Capital. This company filed for bankruptcy earlier this year, and because your friend Danny keeps multiple databases containing information about these things, you're able to target this specific lender. You know the target keeps some of his funds in a Gemini exchange account, so another one of your friends, Wiz, calls his personal number, pretending to be Google support. The plan is to get him to reset his Gmail and iCloud by claiming they're already compromised. This wasn't enough to get full access to the account, but it did give you access to an atomic wallet, which was mostly empty. You search through the mailbox on the iCloud account to find more information about where the money is, while your friend Box decides to call again some time later, this time pretending to be from Gemini in order to get him to reset the account that way. Once Box gets on that call, a new opportunity arises. Not only has he gotten him to reset the account and move $4.5 million to a new wallet you control, but he's also convinced him to hop on AnyDesk, a screen sharing tool that allows you to interact with his computer, while Box helps him reset the rest of his wallets to make sure they're not compromised. After the creditor restores his wallet and makes a new backup, Box tells him to upload it to his OneDrive, which you have access to, giving you full control of his private keys. Now it's game over.
Oh wow. Wow, I see it.
No way. No fucking way.
I see it, bro.
It's on the blockchain. It's on the blockchain.
Oh my god. Fucking way, nigga.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
No fucking way.
$242 million! Yes!
Holy fuck, nigga.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Bro, I'm gonna spaz out! Yo! We're done! We're done! I'm spazzing out! You know how much money that is.
It's a quarter,
Holy
quarter of a bill.
How much
Probably.
you
Yeah.
got?
Spent 3 ways or is it 4 ways? That's
Oh, I'm gonna lose my shit.
Now of course, you can't just go and spend all that money immediately. So Wiz brings on his friend Dark. For a small fee, he agrees to help all of you launder the money through low-security crypto swapping services like ThorSwap and EXEH. The process is simple. In order to obscure the trail, the Bitcoin gets traded for Ethereum, which then gets traded for Litecoin, which is finally swapped for Monero, a coin known for its privacy features. This still isn't enough as you do this process back and forth between multiple different addresses, and with every transaction, you split the money up into smaller pieces to make it harder to spot on the blockchain, before sending everything back to your main wallet once you think it's fully laundered. You wonder if this is really enough to hide the money trail, but quickly brush that thought off. I mean, you just got over $50 million deposited back into your account with no strings attached. You're more worried about how you're going to spend it. Your friends all gather once again in a call and talk about what you intend to do with the money once it's been cleared. A few of you talk about not buying anything too flashy and laying low for a while until you see what the aftermath is. These morals quickly go out the window once you guys actually talk about what you want to spend the money on. You talk about cars, clothes, real estate, and everything in between. You start slow with a couple of pieces of designer, a rental house, and a nice car, but this all changes once your friends book a private plane to meet with you in California, and you go to the club together.
I'm a juvenile and I love to steal. Round around town with that chrome steel. See your bitch up in the club, she can get fucked. Fully loaded clip, and you better duck. Riding through our city, we don't really give a fuck. Heard you quit that lean, not so pouring up.
You wake up not really remembering what happened last night. According to your friends, you'd spent a fortune the whole night, bought tens of rounds of bottle service, and gave it away to everyone in the other sections. A small part of you thinks this was a bad idea, but you had so much damn fun last night, you think just one more night can't hurt, so you do it again. Spend $570,000. Fuck it. Box also starts renting a mansion in Encino for $50,000 a month, and you start spending more time together. Having someone else with just as much money as you made you feel more powerful, and made it easier for you to spend more money. You feel untouchable as the theft you committed hasn't hit the mainstream media yet. You think maybe, just maybe, you've gotten away with the biggest crypto heist in history. Picture this, you're standing in line, bored out of your mind when your phone suddenly rings. You check it thinking someone's trying to reach you, but no, it's someone trying to log into your account. This is where Aura, the sponsor of today's video, can help you. If you've ever found out that some guy in Russia, you're the one who gave it to, but a well-known crypto investigator, Zach XBT, is walking into an airport. He gets a notification on his phone. Someone's just transferred $600,000 in Bitcoin to a small crypto exchange, a low-security one, which he monitors for signs of money laundering. This was easily 10 times bigger than the typical trade on this website, so of course, it raised his suspicion. He goes through the airport security, and by the time he's reached this gate, another transaction worth $1 million has been sent to the same exchange, then another one for $2 million. Whilst he's waiting to board the plane, Zach starts tracing back the funds. He finds out that all the addresses connect to a wallet that had been holding a massive amount of Bitcoin since 2012, and now it's being liquidated at a rapid pace. No 10-year investor would do this. Using the airplane Wi-Fi, Zach finds out that some of the funds come from the now bankrupt crypto lender, Genesis Global Capital. He messages the admins on Twitter and alerts his followers of the ongoing theft. A few days later, he gets a message from someone affiliated with the crime. This person wasn't directly involved, but were friends with Wiz, who had shown them the recording he took during the heist, and the person watching recorded it and sent it straight to Zach. You keep partying, start meeting girls way out of your league. You buy them gifts, bags, clothes, cars, whatever they want really. You get something for yourself too, of course. $2 million wristwatches, iced out jewelry. Before you know it, you're invited by a popular club promoter to go to Florida. He says he'll take good care of you there. You love Miami so much, you end up moving most of your assets there, rent a $10 million mansion in Brickell, and really start building up your supercar collection. In just 1 month, you end up buying 3 Ferraris, 9 Lamborghinis, 1 Porsche, 3 G-Wagons, 2 Rolls Royces, a blue BMW, a fully blacked out carbon fiber McLaren, a blue Pagani Huayra, and finally another pink Lamborghini Urus, which you bought for this model Leela, who you met at one of the clubs. She gave you her number after you bought her a Birkin, and in order to win her over, you try sending her flowers, buying her more bags, and of course, the pink Urus you just bought. Unfortunately for you, she's already taken. You don't seem to care. This is not even the full collection. There's still another 11 cars. I just don't know what they are. Guess that's what being in Miami does to you. It's August 25th, and Wiz's parents are out driving in Connecticut. They're in a brand new 2024 Urus, which Wiz had rented for them. At a red light, they get rear-ended by a Honda Civic. A van then cuts in front of them, and 6 men jump out surrounding their car. They open the car doors and drag his parents out. His dad resists, but then gets punched and hit in the face with a baseball bat. They're both forced into the van and tied up. With police sirens in the distance, the men yell,
"Call Rick! We're in deep shit!"
As they drive away, the car swerves off the street and crashes. The perpetrators flee, leaving your friend's parents in the car. A few hours later, he calls you worried, tells you these guys knew who he was. On top of that, he tells you his house has been getting bombarded with swatting calls recently, which makes you think it's all falling apart. You wake up in your Florida mansion, go downstairs and do your daily routine. But as you sit downstairs, something feels off. You're not really sure what it is.
The FBI swarmed a luxury home in Miami in a raid connected to the theft of cryptocurrency. The government says it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Authorities took Malone Lamb into custody.
Pretty stunned as federal agents surrounded a home last night. The FBI swarming the entire neighborhood with long guns and firing flashbangs.
7 South Rowling is live outside of that neighborhood.
They get Box 2 when he comes home from his vacation in the Maldives. His girlfriend is interrogated and then let go. The cops tell her the only way you could make this worse is if you go to his friends and tell them what happened. She immediately does that. Wiz, Danny, and Chen all delete everything connected to the heist, including their Telegram messages and most of their social media. Box gives up around $20 million in crypto he kept on his phone. They seize all of your assets, totaling around $59 million. As you're put in the car, you start thinking about how all this came to be. I mean, just 3 years ago, you, Wiz, and Box were all just some Minecraft kids, playing UHC and factions to pass the time and get to know each other. You think about how you used to dox admins and other players on the servers you played on to gain an unfair advantage over others. Sometimes you'd get banned, but you'd always find a way back. New accounts, VPNs, even buying unbans. Unfortunately for you, you can't just buy an unban from jail.
I want to select the Windows Server 2022 Microsoft Evaluation Center. This is where we will download our ISO file by clicking on Download the ISO, and then we need to fill in the information. Once you fill in the information, you should be presented with a screen. The next thing to do is click on 64-bit edition under ISO downloads. And depending on your speeds, this might take a while. However, Google, we want to search up Windows Server 2022 ISO. And we want to select the Windows Server 2022 Microsoft Evaluation Center. This is where we will download our ISO file by clicking on Download the ISO, and then we need to fill in the information. Once you fill in the information, you should be presented with a screen. The next thing to do is click on 64-bit edition under ISO downloads. And depending on your speeds, this might take a while. However, once the ISO is finished downloading, we then want to start adding this onto our virtual machine. To do this, we want to click on the new icon and then provide your virtual machine with a name. I will call it ADDC01, and then the folder, you can select the folder of where you want to output your virtual machine. As for the ISO image, we want to select the one that we just downloaded, and we want to leave all of this as default, but I will select skip unintended installation because I don't want VirtualBox to automatically install this, as I have experienced some errors in the past. Google, we want to search up want to start adding this onto our virtual machine. To do this, we want VirtualBox to automatically install virtual machine with a name. I will call it ADDC01, and then the folder, you can select the folder of where you want to output your virtual machine. As for the ISO image, we want to select the one that we just downloaded, and we want to leave all of this as default, but I will select skip unintended installation because I don't want VirtualBox to automatically install this, as I have experienced some errors in the past when I was using it. Now under the hardware tab, it is set to 2 gigs by default, so I will actually change this over to 4. Now this might be a little slow, but that is okay as long as it works. And if you have a computer that only has 8 gigs of RAM, for example, I would recommend you shut off all of your virtual machines and install them one at a time. Once everything is installed, then you want to change your specs back to 2 gigs instead of 4, as this will help you save some resources. But in the beginning, stay with 4 gigs until everything is installed. As for hard disk, I am going to leave it as 50 gigs because I think that's good enough, and I will select finish. Now we can go ahead and just hit start. So once the virtual machine is booted up, you'll see the setup, and I will leave it as default and hit next and select install now. As for the operating system, you'll see the setup, and I will leave it as you save some resources. But in the beginning, stay with 4 gigs until everything is installed. As for hard disk, I am going to leave it as 50 gigs because I think that's good enough, and I will select finish. Now we can go ahead and just hit start. So once the virtual machine is booted up, you'll see the setup, and I will leave it as default and hit next and select install now. As for the operating system you want to install, you want to select the second option, which is Windows Server 2022 Standard Edition Desktop Experience. If you don't select that, you'll just get a CLI, a command line interface, and it can be pretty tough to navigate around it. So make sure you select the second option and then hit next. Accept the terms and agreements, and we want to select custom and hit next. Now this will take its time and install Windows. and select install now. As for the operating system you want to install, you want to select the second option, which is Windows Server 2022 Standard Edition Desktop Experience. If you don't select that, you'll just get a CLI, a command line interface, and it can be pretty tough to navigate around it. So make sure you select the second option and then hit next, accept the terms and agreements, and we want to select custom and hit next. Now this will take its time and install Windows Server 2022 onto our virtual machine. Alright, so this took about
This your bag, sir?
What gave it away?
Oh, you.
Over 70% of PC gamers still use Windows, but maybe they shouldn't be, because this is SteamOS. It's fast, it's free, and built for gaming. But does any of that actually make a difference when you're using a $100 garbage PC? Well, today we're going to find out if switching to SteamOS can actually turn my $100 useless computer into a proper gaming beast. But first, let me show you how cursed this setup really is, because this thing is hands down the most scuffed machine I've ever owned. But just how bad is it? Well, the CPU inside this Dell Optiplex is an Intel Core i7-6700. Not bad for an office PC that costs less than a used Chromebook, but still it's older than half the games we're about to test. And believe it or not, I haven't even gotten to the real problem with this PC, because this CPU is actually the strongest component. This system was built to run CPU-intensive games on a budget, so naturally the real bottleneck is actually the GPU. It's an NVIDIA Quadro K4200, a graphics card made for 3D modeling and professional workloads, not gaming. Now that may not sound like a problem until you realize that it was released 11 years ago, before the GTX 900 series. Though it is the fastest graphics card you can consistently find for around $20, that doesn't say a lot when its only competition is the GT710. And I think we all know that the GT710 is nothing but a glorified HDMI port, so the K4200 being better than it is not very impressive at all. Not to mention that this might be the single most unsafe GPU setup. This card is running off a $3 power adapter. Not sure how it didn't catch fire yet, but we'll worry about that later. But let me show you how my $100 PC runs games on Windows 10, so we have FPS numbers to compare with at the end of the video. Starting with the easiest game we'll be testing in this video, Tomb Raider from 2013. With a game this old, it's not surprising that we get over 60 FPS on ultra settings. But with ultimate settings, I can't lie, it's pretty bad at 38 FPS. Hopefully SteamOS can bring that up at least a little bit. The second game, Rise of the Tomb Raider, runs at a solid 53 FPS. Except it's on medium settings, and it's at 900p. In the third game, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we get 56 FPS. Except it's on lowest settings and at 720p. I can't even turn on upscaling to boost my FPS because my GPU is so old it just crashes if I try. And for the last game, Cyberpunk 2077, I was surprised this PC could even open the game because this shit destroys my $1,600 one. But it gets a fairly surprising result of 27 FPS at 720p low settings. So now that we know how my PC runs on Windows 10, let's see if SteamOS, a Linux-based operating system, can boost my FPS. And if it does, I might just install it on every computer I own. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, because I haven't even tried SteamOS yet. So of course I went to Steam's official website to grab the installer, except there's one small problem. SteamOS doesn't actually support desktop PCs. As of right now, it only has official support for the Steam Deck and Legion Go S, so it was a lot more complicated than your regular Windows installation. At first though, it seemed easy enough. I used Rufus to flash the SteamOS image onto a USB, something I've done plenty of times in the past. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know that installing Windows on weird PCs ends up being the hardest part of the video because of compatibility issues. So it shouldn't be a surprise that installing an OS that doesn't even support desktops didn't exactly go smoothly. What the heck is that? Yo, what the heck is that? Bruh, my cursor's just frozen in the top left. I'm literally moving my mouse. Bro, I'm moving my mouse. I spoke too. Oh my goodness, why is it getting big? Did you see that? Whoa, the more I move it, the bigger it gets. But yeah, after that extremely long process, I was already liking the look of the software. I mean, right off the bat, it has a better default browser. I'll take Firefox over Microsoft Edge any day of the week. But about 2 seconds later, it already started lagging, and that's when I realized we were still in the setup environment. SteamOS wasn't even installed yet. Eventually, after clicking the repair button to install SteamOS way too many times, we ran into our first error of the video. It just can't install because I'm using a SATA SSD. Thankfully, it seems like I wasn't the only one trying to install SteamOS on the SATA SSD, and I was able to find a tutorial for this exact problem. But when I saw how long the tutorial was, I knew this was going to be a huge pain in the ass. The first step to making this operating system work with my unsupported SSD is to edit a file, and that file just so happens to be on that same SSD. So it took literally a full minute to open the file explorer and another whole minute to open the file itself. Then I needed to find the name of my drive by running a console command, which also took another entire minute to open. And don't even get me started on how long it took to type it out.
I feel like an old guy typing right now, bro. Yo, I did not press A that many times.
After running a simple command, it looks like the SSD is named SDA, so what we're gonna do here is replace the text here where it says NVMe and remove the suffix, and we're good to go. At least that's what I thought, because we now have a new error. It says it's an EFI system partition, but it needs to be ESP, so it cannot proceed with the repair. This should have been a pretty simple thing to fix with some command lines, but because my PC is still lagging like hell, every line takes forever to type. I could have been done with the whole thing in the time it took to write one line. Ultimately, I was able to fix it, but my blind ass somehow didn't notice that there was a second error. On line 1, I somehow managed to add a J in front of the hashtag and nuked my entire script. But after deleting it, you'd think we're good now, right? Yes, but actually no, because the error I thought I fixed 2 seconds ago is back again. So I had to do a bunch of nerdy shit that nobody cares about to try and fix it again. Keyword try, because after another 20 minutes of working with this laggy system, it was still broken. Bro, and wiping device doesn't work either, bro. I try to wipe the device and it just doesn't work. A few hours of struggling later, a guy in the YouTube comments may have saved my life. I cannot believe that all I needed to do was look in a YouTube comment section.
Please, bro. Just work. Oh, wait, that's never happened before. No freaking way, that guy just saved my life. That guy actually just saved my life. Oh my god, you are the freaking GOAT. Holy shit. Nah, this guy actually saved me. I was gonna say he saved me tons of time, but it's still 11:46 and I've been working on this for a total of about 5 or 6 hours now. Now we low-key just gotta wait. There's not much I can do right now. I just gotta wait.
Looking back at the footage, I have no clue how this managed to take nearly 6 whole hours. For you, it hasn't even been 6 minutes. And just as I thought we made it to the end, my PC failed to reboot. How is this even possible?
Call to reboot failed? What do you mean I can't reboot it? I gotta manually do it.
I couldn't even restart it either. So I had to forcefully shut it down and turn it back on. And right when we were about to finish the challenge, whatever this is popped up on my screen. I can't even describe what I'm seeing right now. What the fuck is this? I tried rebooting 3 times and it's still the same screen every single time. I even removed Windows from the boot order completely and it was still fucked. Pushing almost 6 hours into the challenge, I was down to do basically anything to make this thing work. And one of the solutions I came up with was to plug my monitor into the motherboard instead. 9 times out of 10, it is a sin to plug the cable into the motherboard instead of the GPU. But in this case, it might be a GPU driver issue, so I thought I might as well see if the Intel integrated graphics would work. But after sitting through yet another black screen for 10 straight minutes, I think it's safe to say this specific SteamOS image just isn't gonna work with my PC. But I wasn't about to give up there. I've already spent way too much time on this project. So it was time for plan B. With SteamOS 3 growing in popularity, developers around the world have been creating their own versions, ones that actually get frequent updates and support desktop PCs. One of the most promising options is Bazite, a SteamOS clone.
Hey Joe, what are you doing here on a weekday? You didn't call for an appointment, man. It's gonna be a while. I was afraid of this. Go ahead and sit down.
The difference is that this time my cursor isn't lagging like crazy and I can actually type without a 5-second delay. Unlike SteamOS, Bazite installed cleanly and games downloaded easily. The only problem, I'm still connected to my integrated graphics. I forgot I was still plugged into the motherboard, so I tried again with the GPU plugged in, except it didn't work. As a spoiled Windows user, I thought this would be a pretty easy thing to fix, just install the drivers. But little did I know, this would become one of the hardest obstacles of the whole challenge. So I had to call up the biggest nerds I know to try and help me out. But since this was a pretty unusual Linux distro, a ton of the commands that we tried didn't do anything. We had to find workarounds for workarounds just for it to refuse to work in the end, because the K4200 is too freaking old to have official support on this OS. From the start, I knew this GPU was gonna cause some issues because it's so damn old, but usually I find a way around them, but I guess I'm out of luck this time. So I ended up having to try another SteamOS alternative, Nobara Linux. At this point, we've shifted the goalpost from installing SteamOS to simply finding something that works, because this GPU is so outdated, almost nothing supports it. And as we drift further and further from installing actual SteamOS, you've probably noticed that things are getting easier and easier. That said, I was finally able to install the GPU drivers with just a single click. If only it was that simple. In reality, there were still over 1,600 other updates I had to install. And now that it's past 1 AM, it was clear that this challenge was going to stretch into yet another day. The next morning, I continued with the NVIDIA driver install, and after about an hour and a half, I finally got a positive message. The installation was complete. And when I rebooted the PC with the GPU plugged in, it actually turned on, just for me to immediately break the entire OS. There goes another 2 hours of my life. That's when I turned to Linux Mint, a more traditional Linux distribution. It was way easier to install updates and drivers compared to the others, but unlike the other three, Mint doesn't come pre-tweaked for gaming, so I had to install a few extra things just to make it even mildly competitive with the other gaming-focused Linux versions. After installing the graphics drivers, this was finally the first OS to run smoothly while my GPU was connected. But when I tried opening Tomb Raider on here for the first time, I noticed something weird. It was still running on integrated graphics, even though the GPU was connected, and obviously that made the game run poorly. I fixed that by installing a few more packages, but even with my NVIDIA K4200 working properly, Tomb Raider on ultimate settings still only got about 30.6 FPS. This really surprised me, as Linux consumes less resources than Windows by default, but the NVIDIA drivers on Linux are just that bad. I ran the test 4 times just to be sure, and every time it landed between 29 and 31 FPS. On average, that's about 8 FPS less than what I got on Windows. 8 frames might not sound like much, but when your base frame rate is this low, it makes a huge difference. On Ultra settings, it was the same story. We dropped frames again and ended up with just 55.1 FPS compared to 64 on Windows. Still playable for sure, but a disappointing result. But maybe it'll improve with the newer games, right? Well, that wasn't really the case, because the next 2 games in the trilogy follow the same trend. Rise of the Tomb Raider ran at 43 FPS at 900p medium settings, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider got about 42 FPS.
10 minutes, and after the setup is completed, you should be presented with the screen to create our own password. Now, of course, I will type in a super secure password, and then I'll click on finish. After a couple seconds, we can now start to log in using the username administrator and the password that we had just set. As an FYI, to perform a Ctrl-Alt-Delete onto your virtual machine, because it does say, hey, press Ctrl Alt Delete to unlock. We can do this by selecting the Input tab at the top, go over to Keyboard, and insert Ctrl Alt Delete, or you can use the shortcut key. I'll click on Finish. After a couple seconds, we can now start to log in using the username administrator and the password that we had just set. As an FYI, to perform a Ctrl Alt Delete onto your virtual machine, because it does say, hey, press Ctrl Alt Delete to unlock, we can do this by selecting the Input tab at the top, go over to Keyboard, and insert Ctrl Alt Delete, or you can use the shortcut key that is listed over here. We'll log in with the password that we just created. And once we log in, we can just go ahead and select no for now. And we'll see an application called Server Manager, which is what we'll use to install our Active Directory, but that will be in part 4 of the series. Now that we have our Windows target machine, Kali Linux, and Windows Server installed, the last thing to do is install our Splunk server. Over to our web browser. Now, and we'll see an app delete, or you can use the shortcut key that is listed over here. We'll log in with the password that we just created. And once we log in, we can just go ahead and select no for now. And we'll see an application. And once we log in, we can just go ahead and select no for now. And we'll see an application called Server Manager, which is what we'll use to install our Active Directory, but that will be in part 4 of the series. Now that we have our Windows target machine, Kali Linux, and Windows Server installed, the last thing to do is install our Splunk server. Over to our web browser, let's head over to ubuntu.com, and under Products, we want to select Ubuntu Server. Now we can click on Download Ubuntu Server, and as of recording, the version that we are downloading is Ubuntu Server 22.04.3. Now this version might be different depending on when you are watching this, but as long as you select any form of 22.04, you should be good to go. So I'll go ahead and select that and your download should begin. Now of course, over to our web browser, let's head over to ubuntu.com, and under Products, we want to select Ubuntu Server. Now we can click on Download Ubuntu Server, and as of recording, the version that we are downloading is Ubuntu Server 22.04.3. Now this version might be different depending on when you are watching this, but as long as you select any form of 22.04, you should be good to go. So I'll go ahead and select that, and form of 22.04, you should be good to go. So as long as you select any form of 22.04, you should be good to go. So I'll go ahead and select over to our web browser. Let's head over to ubuntu.com, and under Products, we want to select Ubuntu Server. Now we can click on Download Ubuntu Server. And as of recording, the version that we are downloading is Ubuntu Server 22.04.3. Now this version might be different depending on when you are watching this, but as long as you select any form of 22.04, you should be good to go. So I'll go ahead and select that and your download should begin. Now of course, if your download does not start, you can go ahead and select Download Now. Similar to how we installed our other virtual machines on VirtualBox, we want to go ahead and select New. And I'll name our server Splunk. The folder is going to be under my Active Directory project folder. As for the ISO image, we want to select the one that we had just downloaded. We'll leave everything as default, but of course we want to skip the unintended installation. As for hardware, I'll name our server Splunk. The folder is going to be under my Active Directory project folder. As for the ISO image, we want to select the one that we had just downloaded. We'll leave everything as default, but of course we want to skip the unintended installation. As for hardware, I am going to set this to 8 gigs. But again, depending on your hardware specs, you can set this to 4, and I'll also select my processors to 2. We want to make Splunk a little beefier compared to our other virtual machines because this is going to be ingesting data and we'll be running searches on it. For our hard disk, I'll go ahead and bump this over to 100 gigs and hit finish. Now we can go ahead and power it on by clicking on start. Once you're presented with the screen, go ahead and select the first option, which is try or install Ubuntu server. For the options, I'll leave it as default and continue hitting enter. Continue without updating, that's fine. Done, 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 and done. Perfect. So now we want to select disk. I'll go ahead and bump this over to 100 gigs and hit finish. Now we can go ahead and power it on by clicking on start. Once you're presented with the screen, go ahead and select the first option, which is try or install Ubuntu server. For the options, I'll leave it as default and continue hitting enter. Continue without updating, that's fine. Done, 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 and done. Perfect. Which is try or install Ubuntu server. For the options, I'll leave it as default and continue hitting enter. Continue without updating, that's fine. Done. The first option, which is try or install Ubuntu server. For the options, I'll leave it as default and continue hitting enter. Continue without updating, that's fine. Done, 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 and done. Perfect. So now we want to select continue. And with the guided storage configuration, we need to use updating. For the options, I'll leave it as default and continue hitting enter. Continue without updating, that's fine. Done, 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 and done. Perfect. So now we want to select continue. And with the guided storage configuration, we need to use the down arrow to go over to done. Click done and go into continue. Finally, we are presented with the options to enter in your name, your username, and password. For my name, I'll just select Bob. The server name, I'm going to say Splunk. The username, I'll say mydfir. And the password, make it super secure. And hit done. Now we don't need Ubuntu Pro, so we can go ahead and skip that for now. And open SSH. Now we don't need Ubuntu Pro, so it's super secure. And hit done. Now we don't need Ubuntu Pro, so we can go ahead and skip that for now. And open SSH, it is up to you if you want to install it. I'm just going to skip it. And we don't need any of these options. So scroll all the way down and hit done. Now our setup is going to start installing Ubuntu server onto our virtual machine. So you know when your installer is completed after you see a reboot now option. So we'll go ahead and select that and hit enter. will get an error saying, now our setup is going to start installing Ubuntu server onto our virtual machine. So you know when your installer is completed after you see a reboot now option. So we'll go ahead and select that and hit enter. You will get an error saying failed unmounting CD-ROM. But don't worry, we can simply hit enter, and if you want you can go ahead and remove the ISO file. But again, I'll just leave it as is. Once Ubuntu finishes up with its reboot, we are now presented with a logon screen, and we'll use the account that we just created earlier. So in my case, it is mydfir, and of course the password. If this is your first time doing this, you might notice that when typing in a password, you don't see any input. And don't worry, this is by design. It is not shown for security purposes. But do note, if you do make a mistake, just go ahead and hit backspace to remove everything, or you can go ahead and hit enter to reset everything, and then try relogging in again. I'll type in mydfir and my password. Once we're logged in, let's run a quick sudo apt get update and sudo apt get upgrade -y and hit enter. It'll ask for my password again. Using this command, we'll go out and let's run a quick sudo apt get update and sudo apt get upgrade -y and hit enter. It'll ask for my password again. Using this command, we'll go out and update and upgrade all of our repositories. Once you are presented with this screen, you can go ahead and hit enter. And now our server is ready to go. We should have a total of 4 virtual machines ready to go. And in part 3, we will start to install Sysmon and Splunk onto our target of our repositories. Once you are presented with y and hit sudo apt get upgrade -y and hit enter. It'll ask for my password again. Using this command, we'll go out and update and upgrade all of our repositories. Once you are presented with this screen, you can go ahead and hit enter. And now our server is ready to go. We should have a total of 4 virtual machines ready to go. And in part 3, we will start to install Sysmon and Splunk onto our target machine and server. And that is it for the video. And hit enter. It'll ask for my password again. Using this command, we'll go out and update and upgrade all of our repositories. Once you are presented with this screen, you can go ahead and hit enter. And now our server is ready to go. We should have a total of 4 virtual machines and hit enter. It'll ask for my password again. Using this command, we'll go out and update and upgrade all of our repositories. Once you are presented with this screen, you can go ahead and hit enter. And now our server is ready to go. We should our repositories. Once you are presented with this screen, you can go ahead and hit enter. And now our server is ready to go. We should have a total of 4 virtual machines.
Hi, if you click this video, you're most likely trying to get started in IT and found the Comptia A+ certification and want advice on kind of where to start. My name is Abdu. I am a cybersecurity professional. I've worked in IT for more than 6 years. I currently have my Comptia A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, as well as my Pentest Plus and CISSP. I took my Comptia A+ certification right before my